All righty. This is Walisha Wilson, 2022 Represent Justice Ambassador, as well as the Georgia chapter of All of Us Are None lead, here with Theresa El-Amin of Columbus, Georgia. Just like to thank you for joining us, Ms. El-Amin, for this interview today as we're working toward ending slavery in Georgia. Thank you so much for joining us. I wanted you to just get an overview or tell us about who you are and about your advocacy in Columbus around the issue of ending slave labor there in Columbus.
Well, I'm so pleased to be with you, Walisha. I've been involved in human rights work since 1965, when I was a student at Tuskegee, working to advance voting rights and to have democracy for the descendants of enslaved Africans throughout the South. I'm originally from Atlanta, and I'm the founder and board chair of the Southern Anti-Racism Network, which was founded in 1998. In 2010, we decided to move to Georgia to work on ending all forms of white supremacy and racism. And when I arrived here in December 2010, the mayor, a woman mayor, had just been elected. And I saw all of the powerful women who were surrounding her and supporting her in that election. And in a few months, I began to see trucks moving around Columbus saying prison detail, white trucks with prison detail on them. And then I began to see workers in prison garb picking up garbage all over the city. And as I investigated more and more, I found out that the Columbus Consolidated Government uses prison slave labor for pretty much everything. So when I approached the mayor, she said, well, we saved $9 million doing that. And the city manager said, no, Madam Mayor, we saved $17 million doing that. And so what I asked the city attorney for was the names and jobs of all of the prisoners and where they worked. The city attorney sent me a letter back saying it was a state secret. And I called up the assistant city attorney and I was laughing so hard. I said, look, I have the open records booklet and I should be able to get these records. And her response was, we can't give you the names of the prisoners, but we can give you the numbers because Georgia runs 25 work camps. And the largest of those work camps is in Columbus, Georgia. So she says to me, I have to pay for the copies of the turnout sheets. And I said, how much? And she goes, $10.47. I almost broke my neck getting down to the government center. It was the best $10.47 I ever spent. That was in April of 2012, and it covered the months of January and February. So all of the turnout sheets were signed by the guards who worked in the different dormitories. So I actually, it's all legal size sheets that tell what dormitories they come out of and what jobs they do. They do everything from carpentry to mechanic. They do the clean all the buildings. They do the recycling. They work in all the public parks. Prison slave labor runs Columbus. They had to lay off a whole bunch of workers in order to replace them with prison slave labor. And when I talk to people who have lived here all their lives, they remember when the garbage was picked up by workers who were paid under the Civil Service Act. So that's how Black workers got jobs, because once they eliminated discrimination in hiring in the 60s with affirmative action in civil service, lots of Black people got jobs. Because I was in Atlanta at the time, and I remember when that happened. And Black workers started taking over jobs like sanitation. So any city you go in, you will see sanitation workers. You may recall that Dr. Martin Luther King was assassinated April 4th, 1968, standing up for the Memphis sanitation workers. So the jobs of sanitation and picking up garbage has been pretty much Black workers for a very long time, over 60 years. So when I approached the mayor after getting the turnout sheets, she met with me and she said, it's legal. This is Mayor Theresa Tomlinson. She said it's legal. And I said, just because it's legal, it doesn't make it right. You're turning out people as slaves. Now, the ones who were picking up the garbage, they paid them, she said, $3 a day, and they put it on their books at the work camp. But the people who clean the buildings and work in the parks, they get zero. So I hired a photographer to take pictures of some of the young men doing the garbage pickup. See, it really is a state law that you can't talk to them, you can't give them money. So a friend of mine was trying to give them money. He was a Catholic priest over off of Fort Benning Road. And the guys who were the straw bosses running the slave operation, they threatened him going to jail. And he's been to jail more than most folks I know. He said, please arrest me. I would love to put this in my story, that I got arrested for giving $5 to slave labor in Columbus, Georgia. And they backed off. But it is in the state statute that you aren't supposed to talk to them or say anything to them. And the Columbus Consolidated Government has enough nerve to put on their website, don't worry about the prisoners going through your garbage. They are not looking for your ID. They're looking for food. How shameful is that? And that's on the Columbus Consolidated website. They are exploiting young men who were arrested for non-violent crimes, because the only people who could be in the work camps are people who are there for drugs or something that was non-violent. That's the only way you get to go to the work camp. And of course, because the prisoners want to be able to get outside, they choose to come to the Columbus work camp because they know they're going to be able to go into the buildings. They do painting, So they actually seek out workers, the Columbus Consolidated Government, based on what they need. So if they need more workers to clean the buildings, if they need mechanics, they look for workers who are arrested for nonviolent crimes and offer them an opportunity to come to the Muscogee County work camp. So the only way to really eliminate the practice of slavery in the United States is to abolish that clause in the 13th Amendment that says you're free as a slave until you're convicted of a crime. See, it's the 13th Amendment that allows Georgia to do this. And when you call the Department of Corrections, they will tell you in no uncertain terms, check your 13th Amendment. It's legal. You get convicted of a crime, then we can work you. And the other thing they add to it, Walisha, is that people volunteer to come to the work camps. But because fewer and fewer people are going to prison, there are not enough workers.
You muted yourself. There we go. I
And
hear
it
you.
cut us off for a minute. But there are not enough prison slave labor workers to do what's needed. So the Columbus Consolidated Government is now hiring contractors to pick up waste. And then they got these new trucks and these new bins to lift it. So it's just a matter of time before the prison slave labor, when it comes to sanitation and trash pickup, is gonna go away. But if you go to the government center, you see very nicely dressed trustees in their whites with the blue trim picking up trash in the government center. They clean the offices of everybody, including the mayor. So those of us who have been calling for an end to the practice and to replace the prison slave labor with real workers who are actually getting paid a living wage, because Black unemployment in Columbus is extremely high. The poverty in Columbus is extremely high. So what we're trying to do as a process of ending mass incarceration as a whole, as you know, you were instrumental in getting the reentry commission started in the Columbus Consolidated Government. On December 10th, thanks to the 4th Street Baptist Church, we're going to have an expungement event. So Suzanne Goddard has already agreed to be there to participate in the expungement of the misdemeanors. So the Georgia Justice Project is going to bring 3 lawyers to the event on December 10th. We're going to have a panel on ending mass incarceration. And we would be so honored, Sister Walisha, if you could speak on that panel. So the panel will include you and another returning citizen. It'll include Pastor Flakes talking about their ministry in the church. And it'll include me talking about the national movement to end mass incarceration. And as you know, as co-chair of the End Mass Incarceration Conference that's happening in January, we want you to talk about that in December so that we can mobilize for it. So all over the country, people are working to end mass incarceration. So that's the work that I'm doing. And I'm so happy to have you for a colleague and comrade.
And
Thank
I'm honored to have you. You know, I had to change my background to Angela Davis when she was asked about ending mass incarceration back in the 60s. And one of her answers was, you know, for one, the 13th Amendment to the Constitution. And she talked about ending slavery. And I think about, whenever I think about you, I think about you, I think about Angela Davis. You have an Angela Davis spirit. And I know a lot of times me and you have fallen out. We've had disagreements, but I truly, truly, I think I get a lot of my activism spirit and just my tenacious for this work from you. And so I'm always honored. I really do, because you're no, what is it? No hands down. You don't hold your bars. You go for what you know, and you know what's right. And I love the fact that you said because it's legal doesn't make it right. And so we get a lot of, you know, when I'm in these spaces, I feel like sometimes Theresa get on my nerves, but I respect you because you've done this work for so long. You could have gotten weary and you have not. So I'm always honored to be in sharing space with you, and I appreciate you for the amount
well,
of time you've put into this work.
well, Sister Walisha, I see the critical resistance movement that Ruth Gilmore, and she has a new book out, really focused on ending mass incarceration. Angela Davis, who's retired from her academic career, she, when she gets to speak often, she talks about this, because to have the United States with over 2 million people locked down virtually as slaves. See, in North Carolina, they have a prison slave labor. So they work inside the prisons, and they make desks for the state legislators. They make furniture, they make all kinds of stuff inside of the prisons. But the shame of the Columbus consolidated government is that they're using prison slave labor to do the work that our tax dollars pay for, but they are not paying the prisons. So that's why we have to fight to end these work camps, because the other work camps around Georgia, they have fewer than 20 people. But Columbus consolidated government depends on prison slave labor to do the work that employees used to do.
And so I had been quoting it saying that Columbus saves $2 million a year. And when you first started talking, you said that they save about 17 million a year from using incarcerated workers.
Yes. See, when the mayor said in December of 2011 that it was 9 million, then when I got to meet with her and the city manager, he said 17 million. Now I had figures as high as 19 million. But see, the other thing is that not only do they save money, but the state of Georgia compensates the Columbus consolidated government so much per day per prisoner. So they're not only saving money by using slave labor, they've been compensated for the 3 meals and a cot by the state of Georgia Department of Corrections. So it's very easy to get the information because it's public information. So if you sit down with the director of finance, they have all the records. See, the guards who guard the prisoners, they get an extra bonus per week. So all of that is in the financial reports. And I have all of those reports, because part of what we have to do as organizers is to do the research that understands the fight, so that we understand what we would be eliminating. So part of this whole idea of eliminating the present day slavery is getting reparations for the descendants of enslaved Africans that have been historically denied our rights, not just here in Columbus, but nationwide. But we have a task force here in Columbus called the Reparations Task Force, which includes our community historian, Johnny Warner. And he has all the statistics about the lynchings and the other things that have been done to people standing up to racism in Columbus. So we have shared all of that with the city council. And our goal is to have a reparations ordinance that goes after the prison slave labor and says end it, but also ends what is starting to happen in Columbus, that affordable housing is going away. It's just like Atlanta. In my apartment complex, I moved into this 3-bedroom apartment in 2010, and I was paying 600 and something. Well, they've raised the rent a little bit, and so I'm paying 705 now. But I've lived here almost 12 years. A new corporation took it over in January, and they let me pay my 705 in February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September. And now they're saying I have to sign a lease to pay $1,064 a month. That is 50% more than what I'm paying now. So when I refused to sign the lease, they filed an eviction notice against me. And I said, I'm not signing. So they gave me a letter from a lawyer saying, I can live here rent-free for October, November, and December. But on December 31st, they expect me to vacate my apartment. So they're probably going to get the apartment. But if you fight, sometimes you can win an inch. So I will be saving over $2,100 for the 3 months I'm living here rent-free. And I'm looking for an apartment, but it's hard. I have a 3-bedroom apartment now, and all of the rents around Columbus are going crazy. So that's the struggle I'm in now for affordable housing. So we have to fight for affordable housing, education equity, and public safety. That's what Columbus Organizing Together, which is a collaborative I started a couple of years ago, and it includes Goodwill, the Columbus Public Library, the IMA, and lots of community groups, including the Urban League. So that's what we're doing here. And we'll be meeting on November 9th. So I'm hoping that you can join that meeting. We meet from 11 a.m. to noon. So I want you to come to that meeting and speak about this project about ending slave labor in Columbus, and also about the EMI conference coming up in January. So let's keep working together, Sister Walisha.
We will. We will. That has been amazing, and I think it's been great. I wanted to ask you one question before we kind of got ready to end everything. Last year, in a news interview, Mayor Skip Henderson said, I guess all of the Columbus residents were up in arms about the recycling and the trash not being picked up. And one of the reasons that he cited as into delays of trash not being picked up was he said we don't have enough prisoners. And we move against using words that are derogatory and take away take away our humanity. So using terms like prisoners and convict and ex-con is not something that we prefer to be used, as opposed to an incarcerated person or incarcerated worker. And so I actually I did contact and say, I think that was just awful, because by saying such a thing means we need to start now incarcerating more people so we can get free slave labor. And so instead of you saying or accepting responsibility for that, it was, oh, that was just taken out of context. And so what I wanted to find out is, with the high homelessness rate, the high unemployment rate among Black folks, the inequities in housing that's in Columbus, which also contributes to high crime, a lot of the individuals that are arrested are Black men. And so I wanted to find out right now, when you say jobs, they are taking jobs away, you actually laid people off from getting paid to use free labor. What would be the benefits of ending slave labor in Georgia to the community, to the city of Columbus, but particularly to the Black communities that are more impacted by it?
Well, it's a bit more complicated because the prisoners who come here to work in the work camp are usually not from Columbus. So when their time is up, if they decide they want to stay here and get a job, that is what we have been fighting to allow them to do. See, there was an ordinance passed in the 80s that said Columbus would not hire former prisoners. Well, when Governor Deal in February of 2015 signed the box executive order, Theresa Tomlinson did a ban the box here. The truth of the matter is there are lots of open positions in Columbus. The problem in qualifying is that so many young men who go to prison do not have a high school diploma. In many cases, don't have a GED. So the whole issue of education equity is a starting point. See, what Governor Deal said and what he did while he was in office is he set up a way, and you and I were at that meeting when he talked about it in 2019, where he set up a way where people in prison could get actual high school diplomas, not just GEDs. And he approached the housing authority to not discriminate against people for having a criminal record so that they could get housing. Because what he was very clear about is you got to have at least a high school diploma. You've got to have access to affordable housing. And you've got to be able to find a job. So those are the three things for reentry that's important. So people leaving the work camps and leaving the prisons, in order to end mass incarceration, we have to have an employment component. And I don't have to tell you that because you've been working to get employers to hire returning citizens for a very long time. And so you have done a great job with that. And what we're trying to do is to get employers in Columbus who are members of the Chamber of Commerce to also ban the box. See, we have got to open up more jobs. And the expungement activity that we're going to be doing is going to be helpful. So these are all the strategic activities and objectives that we have to put in place in order to end mass incarceration. And we have to stop arresting people for ridiculous things like criminal trespass. In most cities where I live, they just give you a citation for that and basically say, don't do it anymore. And you might have to pay a fine, but you're not going to be put on trial and end up going to prison. So these are the kinds of things that we want to do. Stop criminalizing marijuana. And so that's happening at the federal level. So these are things that we have to do as activists and advocates to abolish mass incarceration. It is an abolition movement. And that's what I'm a part of. And from my observation of you, that's what you're a part of. And when we get to January at Ebenezer, we're going to have some serious talk about it.
Okay.
So that's what I'm looking forward to.
We sure will, and you'll see me before then. I know I had already had a prior commitment, but I feel like this is something that I'm definitely needing to be at. So I will, see about getting down there for the 10th and joining your November meeting as well with COT.
Yeah.
So I'll make sure I'll do that.
I got to confirm you for December 10th because we're working on the program, and so we're going to start listening in early November. So we want to be able to say
you can go ahead and count me in. You can go ahead and count me.
Well, thank you, because we'll be there from 11 until 2. So 11 a.m. we're going to have the lunch, and then at 11:45 we'll have the panel, and so it'll last for an hour. And then the church has set up 3 private rooms. So the 3 lawyers will be meeting with the individuals who will come with their GCIC records. So they've explained to us that they have to have the U version of the GCIC. So anybody that you know that's interested in getting their records expunged, they have to come to that meeting on December 10th with their actual records, because Suzanne Goddard and possibly somebody from the DA's office will be there. And so they will look at the records. And if Suzanne Goddard signs off on the expungement, we're going to try to have somebody there, like a judge from state court, or if we had the Superior Court chief judge there to help with signing off. So instead of having to wait 2 weeks for the paperwork to go through the court system and get a judge to sign off on it, we want to have a judge on site. So pray for us, because we want a lot of people to walk away happy on December 10th with their records expunged.
Well, make sure you share that information with me as soon as I can get it, or you send me what you want me to put up, and I'll make sure I send it out for folks to let them know what they need to do.
Well, we're going to have a flyer where people can register.
Okay.
And on the flyer, which will be set up as a kind of Google Docs, because it's an in-person event, it's not a Zoom. So when people fill out the registration, because see, the church is going to prepare lunch, and I got a grant from the Women's International Peace and Freedom to pay the church to fix the food. So we're going to eat well for brunch there. So we had a meeting about it yesterday with GJP and Pastor Flakes and Nicole Weiss, the new Georgia person.
Yeah.
She was at the meeting and she explained that she was not in charge of the conference in January. And I said, I know who's in charge of that, Alicia Wilson. And so I explained that I was going to invite you to speak on December 10th. So Nicole will be there.
Okay.
Paige Jan will be there, and a couple of other lawyers, maybe Ann Colleton too. I know you know all these people.
Yeah.
So from GJP, we're going to have good representation. And then we're going to have you and Nicole Wyson from the multi-faith in mass incarceration. So I'm looking forward to it.
Okay, I am as well. And so right now, what I'll do is I'll stop the recording. I think this is more than enough. We'll still have about 10 more minutes to talk if you want to still talk, but I'm gonna stop the recording and I'll definitely let you know. We're hoping to have, my videographer is hoping to have everything's together by within, at least by the mid-November. And at some point she's gonna cut several different formats of it. So at some point I want to be able to put one on as a commercial. And so whatever it is that we get, I'll make sure I send you the end product. I have to get you to sign a consent.
Yeah, because I will definitely want to put it on the SARN website. And the panel discussion on December 10th will be recorded and live streamed on Facebook.
Okay.
So we're asking the panelists to speak for about 7 minutes each, and you'll be speaking about the multi-faith EMI conference coming up in January, but also about the work you're doing with ending slave labor. So that'll be your role.
Okay.
And so I'll be representing the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom, the Fannie Lou Hamer branch based here in Columbus. So we have a nice panel of about 4 to 5 people that we have lined up. And so after all of us speak, then we'll open it up for Q&A. And so people will get a chance to talk more. We don't have a hard stop at 12:45, so we should be able to go until about 1. So to make sure that all the questions get asked and answered. So part of the questioning will be from the folks who are getting their records expunged. So that will be part of the conversation. But then when it comes to the actual records being looked at, they'll be treated with the same kind of respect of being a client to a lawyer. That's what Georgia Justice Project is doing for us. They're giving all of the people getting their records expunged the privacy of talking with a lawyer.
Okay. Okay.
Who will be
Well, I'll make sure I
their
share that
lawyer.
information. That's gonna be awesome. And I'll make sure I've shared it and I'll be glad to come down on that day to participate in that. Let me stop this recording, but I appreciate you and thank you for being here. Ms. El-Amin, don't go anywhere. I'm just gonna stop the recording. And I
Okay,
do need to get you a consent form as well, because I know you do consent from this being uploaded on our social media. I mean, for this to go to the videographer for the actual video that I'm going to be using. But if you also don't have a problem with it, we can put it on our All of Us or None's YouTube page. But I do know that the consent form that I'm going to send you will be for it to be used in this project as we launch our campaign, officially launch our campaign. This is what we're going to be using. So it's going to be a compilation of people that we've interviewed here in the Atlanta area as well as in Columbus. So I just want to make sure you do consent, but I am going to send you an electronic consent to sign as well.
well, I'm perfectly fine with it because I haven't talked about anybody or said anything bad about it. That is
Okay.
true.
Okay.
So I'm perfectly happy with it being in. I know they'll have to edit some of this down
Yeah.
because I know that the whole hour is
Yeah.
going to be there.
Yeah. And I think
So
it's just
I
gonna be more
probably
than enough
should
for
go
her to be able to
inside.
use.
Yeah, I probably should go inside since it's 6 o'clock and I
Okay.
need to take care of myself.
You do. Okay. Well, thank you so very much. And like I said, I'll make sure I update you when the videographer is done with everything. And in the next 10 or 15 minutes, you'll get an electric e-sign from me. It'll say Walisha Wilson sent you. And I'll make sure I get that to you and just sign it. And I'll make sure I send that over to the videographer. And I'm gonna prepare this for her and get this over to her as well.
Sounds like a plan.
All righty. Thank you so much. And I'll see you on send me the information about the November meeting for the COT meeting. And then I'm
Oh,
gonna go
yeah,
ahead and put this
November
up.
9th.
Yeah.
So
Send me
it's
that
at 11
information.
a.m. So I think you're actually on the email list for the Zoom.
Okay.
So I hired somebody to set up the Zoom meeting. So she'll be sending out the Zoom link around the 1st of November because she likes to give people at least a 1
It's my
week
birthday.
reminder.
Okay. That's my birthday, November 1st. So
Oh, get out of here.
yes. I usually come home for a couple days, but I'm not gonna do anything. I'm doing something this weekend, probably karaoke this weekend and just go out to dinner Saturday and Sunday. So not doing too much.
Well, I love celebrating.
Well, you are welcome to
So your
come to
birthday will
Atlanta. Let me
be
stop this. Hold on.
Tuesday. So your birthday